Well, hey everybody, it's William Narod here, the Paradise Guy. Welcome to the third installment of the Belize Success Mastery Program webinar series. This series is set up specifically to help you, somebody that's thinking about living, investing, retiring, or of course starting a business in the beautiful country of Belize. It's here to help you navigate that and save you time, save you money, and most of all, save you frustration. You see, when things in Belize happen, generally they happen a little bit slower than you expect. Things generally happen at a little bit more of an expense than you expect. And generally, navigating the cultural differences, navigating the bureaucratic process can be frustrating. So again, having lived there for 5 years, having helped lots and lots of people do this, I'm here doing these series of webinars to make sure that you're well informed so that you can go through that process in a very efficient manner. Today's webinar is all about immigration and retirement. So immigration is a big subject. So we're going to spend the next hour, hour and a half, maybe a little bit more on that subject. I'm going to go through first and foremost all the things as they exist in the letter of the law, in the letter of the intent of the law, in the letter of the processes that are in place by the government of Belize. Now, there's always a difference in Belize between how things are supposed to work and how things actually work. So we're going to go through both of those. At first, I'm going to tell you how things are supposed to work or how the rules say they're supposed to work. And then we're going to go into detail about how they actually work. And I'm going to give you lots and lots of information about how to navigate that and stay on track, stay on your time frame, and make sure that you get through the process and be able to execute in your dreams and your ambitions for the country of Belize. You see, getting to the starting line in Belize is generally the hardest part. Once you get, all of your pieces of your puzzle together to accomplish whatever objectives you have, doing that is not what's hard. What's hard is getting everything together, everything to line up, getting all your approvals, getting all your permits, et cetera. Once you have all of that in place, then you can go ahead and execute on the great ideas, ambitions, and of course, objectives that you have for the country. So let's get started on immigration here. Give me just 1 second while I put on my old man eyeglasses here for just a second. All right. All right. So here we have our presentation. Again, today, like I said, we're going to talk about Belize Success Mastery, and we're going to talk about immigration, naturalization, of course, the qualified retirement program. These are three important things that you need to know about before you decide to come to Belize and live, invest, retire, whatever it is you're planning on doing here. You got to know about immigration. You got to understand about naturalization, and you got to understand about the qualified retirement program, whether you choose to participate or not. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go through an overview of the immigration department. Now, again, I told you this is going to be as it's written, as the government intends for the program to work. And then after I go through that, I'm going to go through how it actually does work. The main office for immigration is in Belmopan. Belmopan is the capital of Belize. Each district and major town has an immigration office. All of the land borders have immigration office. The international airport has an immigration office. So there's immigration offices all over the place. Wherever you are in the country, you can generally find one very near your location. All offices are mandated to follow the Belize Immigration Act, Chapter 156, the Aliens Act, Chapter 159, the Caribbean Single Market and Economy Free Movement of Skilled Persons Act, Chapter 17.2, and the Trafficking in Persons Prohibitions Act 2013. I know that's exciting stuff, but I want to put all these details in here so you understand how things are actually written and how the rules actually are intended, and then again, how they actually work. Interpretations do vary widely across different offices and personnel, and how things are actually meant to work don't always happen that way. The Department of Immigration and Nationality Services, currently under the Ministry of Natural Resources and Immigration, was actually founded in '86. As you may or may not know, Belize has actually been a country, independent country since 1981. They just celebrated their independence on September 21st, so just a few days ago. And let's continue with our overview here about the mission of the Immigration Department. Their mission is to facilitate, within the laws of Belize, the travel of nationals and visitors and deter illegal immigration. They need to manage the residence and citizenship process and contribute to the sustainable development of Belize. The ministry currently consists of the Minister of State, a CEO, a director, a deputy director, 96 immigration officers, and 43 support staff. Now, my guess is due to the COVID pandemic that we've been experiencing over the last 6 or 7 months in Belize and of course around the world, that staffing number has decreased significantly. The daily hours for immigration, again, when they're not closed for COVID situations, which they are open right now, is from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. And lunch is generally from 12 to 1. In Belize, whenever it's lunch hour, 12 to 1, don't plan on getting much of anything done. Lunch is taken very, very seriously in the country. So go either before lunch or afterwards. And when they say 1 o'clock that lunch is over, that means by generally be back in at their desks by 1:30. COVID measures, again, have modified the hours and the staff, so definitely check before you make the trip over and go to your immigration office. There are different categories of visas. Now, depending upon what you're going to do when you come to Belize, you're going to be interested in different types of categories. The first category is that we're going to talk about is called a student visa. So if you move to Belize and you move there with your children, they're going to say, where are your children going to school? Because it's not realistic that your kids are going to be in Belize and not go to school, unless of course you're doing a homeschooling option, which is a possibility these days. But a lot of times people do homeschooling in conjunction with their regular schooling to facilitate a higher level of learning, often utilized, especially at the high school level, to make sure that your child is ready for college, and it's more college focused as far as the prep work that's being done. But the student visa is something that after you're in the country for a few months and you're getting your children's passport stamped, especially after the school year starts, they're going to say, have you applied for your children's student visa? And you're going to look at them because you've been through this webinar and you're going to say, yes, I have, because you're going to be ahead of the curve. You're going to gather all the documents that you need to go ahead and proceed with that. I have a list of those. You can go to the website for immigration and you can see what the government tells you are those requirements for documents. But I'm going to tell you that there will be other documents in excess of what the documents they ask for. One of the things that is famous for happening in the country of Belize is you show up, you're well prepared, you got all the documents that are on their website or on the piece of paper that you were given, and when you show up they say, well, we need this and this and this, which is an additional piece of paper, and you weren't prepared, and then you have to FedEx it from the States or from Canada or wherever you're coming from, and it slows the process down. Also can contribute to more expense in the process. So let's talk about how you're going to do this. One, when you're done with this webinar, you're going to send me an email at info@paradisesky.com, and you're going to request documents for student visa or documents for whichever type of visa you're going to be pursuing. And it's important that you bring those documents down with you when you come. Generally, I advise people to bring those documents in triplicate because you're going to need multiple copies. It never hurts to have too many copies of your documents. I'm also going to recommend that those be well done color copies, and also bring some originals when possible as well. You're going to need things like utility bills, police reports, birth certificates, of course your passport. You're going to need financial records. You're going to need letters of reference. You're going to need a sponsorship letter from employers, et cetera, or you're going to need company documents if you've got your own company. There's a lot to that. I'll cover that more as we go through it in the program. But here, I want to just talk first about the kinds of visas that are available. Student visa, again, for your kids when they go to school. And it makes it so that when they're in school for that entire school year, you're not having to go down to immigration every single month and incur the cost of getting that stamped every single month. Your child can go to school. You don't have to worry about getting the passport or the visa renewed every single month. Then there's also a dependent visa. A dependent visa is obviously somebody that is living with you, that is dependent upon you, that is not working, and they can get a dependence visa. We'll go into more details about that later. Then there's the in-transit visa. This one's a little rare. People don't talk about it a whole lot, but if you're coming through Belize and you need to stay in Belize for a little while transitioning to somewhere else, you can get an in-transit visa. It's a lot easier to get and less costly, and it's not used very often, but if that's your situation, you're going somewhere else, well, probably you won't be watching this anyway. So let's move past that. Let's talk about a temporary employment visa. Every single year that you are working in Belize, whether you be working, supposedly even if you're volunteering, supposedly if you've got your own business, you have to maintain a valid work permit. And a work permit is not something that can be renewed every year. It has to be applied for and gotten again. So every single year you're treated like you're brand new to the process, and you have to apply for, supply the same documents that you supplied the year before, maybe a few more, and you have to pay whatever fees are associated with that. And every year that you're going to work and or run a business, volunteer in Belize, you have to maintain that work permit. I'll go into details about that later because work permits are really important to understand. Let's also talk about a visitor's visa. When you're in Belize, let's say you're going to stay for 3 months, you have to get your visa renewed on a monthly basis. And it's a real simple process. You simply go down before your due date. It'll say what your due date is in your passport. You go into the immigration office. They'll ask you a few questions. You'll pay a fee. They'll stamp it, and you're out the door for the next 30 days. They will continue to renew that visitor's visa for a certain period of time. It used to be they'd do it almost indefinitely. Then it changed to about 6 months. Post-COVID, I don't really know exactly how long that's going to be because the borders have been closed and immigration has basically been closed for months and months. When they open back up here, starting October 1st with the opening of the international airport, my guess is they're going to treat immigration a little bit differently. So you'll have to make sure that you find out what exactly their rules are on a daily basis. Let's talk about that. Rules change based upon who's behind the counter day to day. They're not supposed to, but you'll find that there'll be different requirements, different tolerance levels for what you're trying to accomplish at the immigration desk every time you go in. Literally, I've done things 5, 10, 15 times the exact same way, and then the 16th time I went in and tried to do the thing that I've done 15 times exactly that way, it didn't work. So just know that in Belize, that is a possibility. So the information I'm sharing with you today are guidelines that are going to help you be prepared for that and to help you have the best chance of going right through whatever immigration process you're going to go through without any problems. But know that things can change in the blink of an eye, and sometimes, and they always maybe do. So anyways, let's move right on to the next slide. Let's talk about more about the visitor's visa. The visitor's visa, again, is the most popular visa because people generally come to Belize and they stay for a period of time. Then they go back to the States or back to Canada or wherever they're from, and they come and go. They're not full-time residents. If you're a full-time resident, you will be required to get a work permit, or you're going to be required to be part of the qualified retirement program. And that's going to dictate how you're going to proceed through the immigration process as your time goes by in Belize. Many people come and stay for 3 months, 6 months, then they leave for 3 months, 6 months, then they come back, and the process starts all over again. So that's an easy way to do it. Definitely something to entertain if you're thinking about that. Now, certain countries are visa exempt. Now, when I say exempt, I mean, it doesn't mean you don't have to get a visa. Come on in here, Christina. Christina is going to help me out with this today because Christina has done a ton of research on this lately because, again, this is always a moving target, immigration, so you never know exactly what this is going to be when you step up to the counter. But let's talk about visa exemption. Now, Christina, when we were talking about this before, exempt does not mean that you don't have to get your passport stamped, right?
No.
Okay, so what does it mean?
Um, it means that those are the countries where you don't have to get you don't have to qualify for a pre-visa. They have sort of an automatic visa granted. Canada, they give a visa, but it's not you have to apply separately for it.
Okay, so let me clarify that. There are many countries out there that when they come to Belize, before they even come to Belize, they have to apply for a visa. And they have to get a visa in order to come to the country. Canada, the United States, and there's a whole list of other countries. If you're not from Canada, the United States, and you'd like a list that actually shows you which countries are visa exempt, send me an email at info@paradisesky.com. I'm happy to send that out to you. But when you have a visa exempt passport, it means you can show up, fly in on the plane, land, go through immigration, they'll stamp your passport, and boom, you're in the country legally for the next 30 days before you have to renew that.
So it's not stamp free, but it's separate process free, basically.
Right, exactly.
An extra cost that associates.
Now, after the first month, if you live in Belize and you're not working initially, or you're just getting your feet under you, you have to renew your visa every 30 days. And it used to be
no, every month, every 30 days.
Yeah, every 30 days. Now, you got to keep track of your date.
Yeah, because some people think, oh, it's monthly, right? And then they go from the 9th to the 9th. But if there's 31 days in a month, oh, wait, I missed it, and then they might not get too angry, depending on the office or the officer, but it's better not to tempt fate.
Okay, so you'll notice every single month you'll lose a day when you're going in to get your passport stamped. So if you got it stamped on the 9th, generally the next month you'll have to get it stamped on the 8th. Oh, and what happens if you go in to get your passport stamped or your due date is on a Sunday? Well, you're supposed to get it stamped then on the Friday. Okay, so always keep that in mind. If you're late, you will get scolded, most definitely. If it's your first time, maybe they won't scold you. They'll just educate you about the fact that you need to get it done in a timely manner, and that if the date falls on the weekend when they're not in the office, you need to get it stamped on the Friday before. Now, there's a cost for getting your passport renewed, your visa. It has gone up recently. It is now 200 Belize dollars per month. That's 100 US a month. So it's not a small amount of money every single month. That's $1,200 a year just to be in the country and to get your visa renewed. Work permits, if you've got those, allow you to not have your visa need to be renewed every single month, but there's a cost to them as well.
Annually.
And generally the cost for those work permits and or student visas, when you add those together, is actually quite a bit more expensive than just getting your passport stamped each month.
Yeah, so it depends on what your risk and financial tolerance level is, or to what extent you're being pushed by the government to get a work visa.
Yes, because after several months in the country, you'll notice that they will start asking you, have you applied for a work permit? You say, well, no, I'm not working here. So well, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
Well, I'm just hanging out.
They don't really like that.
Yeah, they don't want you to just hang out.
They don't want you just to hang out
for too long. Again, years ago when I first came to Belize,
Me too, yeah.
You could hang out as long as you wanted, and every single month you'd go in and pay your fee, they'd stamp your passport. Nowadays, when you get 3 months, 6 months, depending upon the person behind the desk, they're going to start asking you, are you part of the qualified retirement program? Because if you're not working and you're staying in the country, that must mean you're retired. And if you're retired, that means you need to be part of the qualified retirement program. If you're not retired and you're hanging out here, that means you're working in some capacity. So we want you to have a work permit.
Or you're very independently wealthy, in which case they want to see some financial records.
Exactly. So
you got to be prepared.
No matter which door you open, they're going to start asking you for more and more information, and or for you to jump through additional hoops the longer you stay in the country. Again, it used to be a lot easier. Now they're cracking down, and certainly with the advent of the COVID pandemic and the reopening of the immigration offices, my guess is things are going to be a little bit more strict than lenient. So be prepared for that when you come, and we're going to try to prepare you so that you are able to navigate that as successfully as possible. Now, Christina, tell me about other countries besides Canada and the United States, and how their fees might vary and be different than the $200 in Belize.
Well, I guess it depends on where you're going. I mean, I've been to Indonesia, and there, the minute you get off the plane in the airport, no matter where you're from, you have to pay, I think it's something like 100 US a person just to get into the country. After that, I'm not sure to what extent you would have to pay monthly.
But I mean, even people in Belize. So if you're from China and you come to Belize,
different countries have different fee structures. China's quite expensive, actually. I think it's something like $3,000 or Belize or something. I forget offhand, but obviously they have a list of preferred countries, which we hinted at earlier: Canada, the U.S., UK being the top three in general. But it doesn't mean that if you come from a country that is not on that list that you can't come in. It's just that there might be a few more hoops and added costs.
Okay, so if you're not from Belize, or if you're not from U.S., Canada, and or the UK, be aware that there might be additional fees.
And even between the U.S. and the UK and Canada, UK and Canada are obviously Commonwealth. They're a little bit less expensive for things like work permits and whatnot. Than from the U.S. because they are members of the Commonwealth, as is Belize. So there's a teeny bit of a discount.
Okay, Commonwealth people get treated better. Just kidding. All right. By the way, she's from Canada. I'm from the United States, so it's good that you have us both here today because we can give you the perspective from people coming from Canada and, of course, people like myself coming from the United States. Let's move on to the next slide. So as I mentioned previously, and I'll continue to mention probably throughout the presentation because it's important, you're really not allowed to work even quote unquote remotely in Belize without a work permit. Do people do it? Yes. Are there work permit police that run around the island and or the country and knock on your door to check and see if you are properly permitted for your work? No, not generally.
But there are people who might snitch on you.
Exactly. So
if you're going to do it on the down low.
Yeah, so there are people that might out you, and if they out you and somebody comes knocking on your door and you're not properly permitted, you will be fined and or potentially asked to leave the country. So we don't want those things to happen to you. So better to just follow the guidelines, be prepared, make sure you've got your work permit if you are working. And if you're not working, make sure you're applying for the Qualified Retirement Program and or be prepared to prove that you are financially independent and do not plan to work at all. And they'll probably still ask you to be part of the Qualified Retirement Program.
Or to invest somehow in property or something to contribute to the country's economy. That brings me even to the volunteer programs. People think, well, I'm volunteering, so I'm giving some value added. I shouldn't need a work permit because I'm not getting paid. Well, they consider you to be working if you're a volunteer, so they want you to have a work permit.
Yes.
They want some sort of legitimizing documentation that you went and you spent money on towards the country's well-being.
So as a side note on work, you're not actually allowed to come to Belize. I get this question all the time. Can I come to Belize and get a job? Yes and no. Technically speaking, you're not allowed to come to Belize and take any job that would take employment away from a Belizean citizen. So you need a sponsoring employee to get a work permit in Belize. And that employee has to explain in a letter, and you have to supply your resume, which we'll talk about later on in this presentation. You have to supply this, and you have to convince the immigration officials that the skill set that you have and the resume that you have and the certifications that you have cannot be duplicated within the population of the Belizean people. And if that is doable and or you've done a good job documenting that and convincing them of that, then you can take that job. Now, you should also be prepared to not get paid anywhere near what you're used to get paid in Canada and or the United States when you come to Belize. Like I tell people all the time, the market will bear only what the market will bear. I had a gentleman come in town, it's been a few years ago, but it was really funny. He was a general contractor. And he said, I make $150,000 a year doing what I do, because we were bringing him on as a general contractor for a project we were working on. And so he expected to get paid $150,000 US dollars a year to do this job, which would be 300,000 Belize dollars. And we had to explain to him that he'd get paid maybe $25,000 to $35,000 if he wanted the job. If not, there was probably 10 other people waiting in line to go ahead and take that position for him. So make sure you understand when you come down to Belize, if you want to make $1 million, bring $2 million with you. And it's really not a place to come to work and get wealthy. However, if you come,
invest.
you can invest. And if you invest properly, which is what I help people with as well, certainly there are ways to exponentially grow your wealth and help yourself out with cash flow and equity appreciation and any other objectives that you have for your investment. So I know this is a side note, but let's get back to where we are. Know that you may have to prove your income many times to the government of Belize, especially the immigration department. So be sure to have your bank records.
Generally, that's all it takes.
Yeah, and also make sure that if you're going to be part of the qualified retirement program, we'll talk about this later, that you can show that you've got a recurring revenue stream of at least $2,000 per month. This is the government's attempt to avoid a couple things, guys. They don't want people coming to Belize and taking jobs from the Belizeans. 2, they don't want people coming to Belize and running out of money and living on the streets. So to avoid those 2 things, they make sure that you have enough money, and 2, that you're not coming here and you're not going to, for example, you're not going to go and become a bartender. You're not going to go and become a tour operator. As a matter of fact, Belizeans are only ones that are allowed to be tour operators in the country of Belize. Doesn't matter how qualified you are. You can own the company though.
So you need a 51% ownership by a Belizean.
Exactly. You can own the company, but you need a partner that is a Belizean for a tour company.
That controls the company on paper.
On paper. So anyways, if you'd like to know how to start a company, well, stay tuned because that's going to be probably next month's webinar. We're going to talk all about buying a company, investing in companies, and or starting your own company in Belize. There's a lot to know about how to exist in Belize. And again, that's why we're doing these webinars, to make sure that you're well informed. So
and not make the pitfalls that we may have made along the way, right?
The reason qualified to sit here and tell you these things is because we've helped a lot of people avoid the problems. We've seen a lot of people fall into the pits, and we ourselves have had expensive and time-consuming and frustrating experiences ourselves. So we're just passing on the knowledge, we're paying it forward, because we want to see you be a lot more successful, a lot easier and a lot quicker than we dealt with.
And so, everything can be negotiated and overcome.
Yes, it just may take twice as long as you expected. All right, so let's talk more about extended stays in Belize. Let's talk about work permits. We've mentioned this already previously a little bit, but non-retired individuals who do not hold permanent or temporary residency, we'll talk more about permanent and temporary residency later on, but who wish to remain in the country longer than 6 months. No longer can you stay and stamp. Like we spoke before, you used to be able to stay and just get stamped every single month, no problem. Christina, talk about the advantages of that.
Well, once you get your work permit, the obvious advantage is you don't have to worry about it for another year.
Right.
With the caveat that that year probably is up a little sooner than on paper, because you have to start thinking about your next year's work permit application, because you have to start the process over again.
So that's a good point.
Few weeks, months before the expiration date.
Yeah, so that's a good point. So when your work permit is about to expire, you have to start the process all over. So the way to properly do it is a few months before your work permit expires, you start the process again. So that when that work permit expires, boom, your new one is active and ready to go.
There's no lapse in between, because they will, if you have a receipt to show that your process has started, they'll let that go, but you still have to stamp in between, and that's extra money out the window.
Yeah, they call that an extension. And it generally also takes up a full page in your passport book. So it's real easy to run out of pages in your passport book if you're getting extension after extension after extension while you're waiting on your work permit to be approved. So start ahead of time. I tell people this all the time before they move to Belize. Start on your banking documents. Start on your work permit process. Start on your QRP process. The sooner and the more proactive you are with this stuff, the better prepared you'll be to get started sooner rather than later.
And some other advantages, though, you are in the system, for one. It makes it easier to do a whole lack of other things, like if your children have student visas, it enables you to do that. It enables you to get a trade license if you have a business going on in the whatever given town. Our experience being with San Pedro, they're very big on the trade license. Can't get a trade license with a work permit, and vice versa. So it basically is your passport towards getting things done in Belize. And it's stronger than a tourist visa for obvious reasons. For your tourist visa, you're not supposed to be doing all these things anyway. You're supposed to just be a tourist. So it legitimizes you in very many ways that affect daily life.
So let's also talk about this. You know, what's going to help your process as well is having a bank account in Belize. It
Right.
used to be that you could come to Belize. When I came to Belize initially, when she came to Belize initially, we opened our bank accounts in what, 2 weeks?
Yes.
2-3 weeks, boom. International account and local Belize dollar account. International account for US dollars, Belize dollar account for local transactions. No problem. Nowadays, for people to open those same bank accounts, it is time consuming. Lots of hoops to jump through, lots of documentation to provide, lots of patience to be had. So if you're going to come down to Belize, start the process of getting your bank accounts set up, get your application in for the QRP, get your documents together, and start the process for your work permit. All of this stuff should be proactively dealt with. If you need any help with that, of course, contact me. I'll put you in contact with all the right resources that you're going to need on the ground in Belize to make sure you're properly taken care of. And of course, if I happen to be there at that time, I'm there to sit down with you and talk you through and walk you in the right doors to make sure that's going as smoothly as possible as well.
And one of the things we didn't quite mention about the work permit is not only to get a specific job working for someone else. As we mentioned, that can be a little bit difficult maybe because you have to have a sponsor, you have to prove that you're not taking the job away from a Belizean, etc., and so forth. But what it also does is it allows you to have your own business, run your business as you see fit without too many people bothering you about are you working officially or not. So business owners have to have a work permit as well. And then you are self-employed and they leave you alone. Basically, it is basically an open passport to all sorts of dealings that way.
All right, let's move along. So work permits legitimize your name in the national system, as Christina was saying. Under the current COVID-19 restrictions, allows for repatriation to the country. So let's say you have a business and you're locked out of the country because they locked down Belize again. It could happen. I mean, they've done it for a long time now, over 7 months, I believe. The country's basically been locked down. If COVID goes crazy even more in the country, they could lock it down again. I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you if that's going to happen or not. Hopefully not. But if it did and you were outside the country and you need to get back because you need to take care of business or you need to take care of other things in the country related to your business, you can repatriate back to the country. Now, I'll tell you this right now, there are thousands of people trying to repatriate back to Belize. I think 900 so far have been allowed to actually repatriate. So what happened is they started the repatriation process, and a lot of those people coming back to the country, well, guess what they brought with them? A nice little gift called COVID. And COVID, as a result of that, and other people coming to the country for other means, the COVID spread like wildfire. We went from 50 diagnosed cases in the country to now over 2,000 in a very short period of time. So now we're opening up for tourism as of October 1st, and we've got other people still lined up to repatriate. The country doesn't quite know how to navigate this because they're scared to death that the healthcare facilities are going to be completely overwhelmed, which is easy to do in Belize because the healthcare facilities are quite limited in their capacity. But they're still going to make a try of this, opening up October 1st. January 1st, they're talking about even relaxing the standards even more and letting more tourists in and letting them possibly even roam freely around the country. This first stage, October 1st, just so you know, they have to come and stay at a resort and remain at that resort unless they're going on a private tour with a gold standard approved tour guide. So the costs are going to be a lot higher. You're going to be isolated away from basically the Belizean people and all the expats that live in Belize. You're supposed to stay at your resort. This is just a gradual reopening so that Belize can figure out how the heck they're going to navigate this and deal with the possible repercussions of an overwhelmed medical
on a going forward basis.
Yeah. So challenges of a small country. Belize is an awesome place. It's got a lot going for it, but it's a young country. It's a small country. It is the least densely populated country in Central America. It's got about 350,000 residents, probably a lot less than that now since COVID. And it's got, on the mainland, for example, it's got 2 hospitals. One's a public hospital, one's a private hospital. On the island of Ambergris Caye, which is the #1 tourist destination, it's got 0 hospitals. It's got 2 clinics. One is a private pay clinic, the other one is a public clinic, which is free. And the medical care that's available in Belize is okay. It's not great. It can be good, depending upon what you're seeking medical care for. It can be really good, but it can also be very, very insufficient, depending upon what your situation
Or
is.
spread thin
Yes.
would be the way to put it, I think.
Yes. So you've got people that have needed medical care who've repatriated back to Canada, repatriated back to the United States, repatriated to Mexico, because the medical care, frankly, in those different countries is much higher than in the country of Belize. So just know and keep that in mind as you're moving forward. Let's get back to work permits. It facilitates obtaining permanent residency. So with a work permit, you're going to be in line over time. It's going to be easier for you to go ahead and apply for and get your permanent residency. Christina, how long do they have to be in the country to apply for their permanent residency?
It's generally a year.
Okay.
Where you can't have left the country for more than 14 days. And we'll talk about that a bit more later. But
yeah, but
that first year is crucial.
Yeah, so they want to see
After that, it gets a little.
They want to see that you're in the country for a full year before you apply for your permanent residency. Now, what people misunderstand is they say, well, I stayed here a year, now I've applied for my permanent residency, I'm going to go back to the States for a month. Nope, disqualifies you. You're done. So in order to apply for permanent residency, they want to see that you actually want to be a permanent resident.
You have to commit.
And so if you're not willing to make that commitment to being in the country and not leaving more than 14 days for the entire year, oh wait, that's the way it's written. But I know people that have left for 13 days 4 times in a year, and they still got their permanent residency. How come it's like that, Christina?
Interpretations of the law being interpretations, and different individuals doing the interpreting.
Yes. So yes.
Comes to mind.
I know people that have their permanent residency that left the country 5-6 times in 1 year for 13 days at a time.
And that 14 days doesn't have to be consecutive. You can do 2 days here, 4 days there, and whatnot, but you're not supposed to exceed altogether. However.
But I also know other people who left the country 1 time during the year for 15 days
and got nailed
and were not allowed to apply for their permanent residency that year. They had to do a whole other year in the country before they could apply. So if you want to play it safe, here's what you do. And you want to qualify for your application to be a permanent resident. You have to stay in the country and leave in a year no more than 14 days. So let's say you go to Guatemala for 2 days. You go to Mexico for 7 days. You go to the United States for the rest of those days. 14 is your limit. You can't pass that. And when you're at that limit, you have to stay in the country, wait for your calendar year to roll over, and then you're allowed to do another 14 days for the entire next year, but no more. If you continue to do that, and you're putting your application in the process, which sometimes that process takes 3 months, sometimes that process takes 6 months.
Sometimes it takes 2 years.
Sometimes it takes 2 years. It depends upon who you're dealing with. It depends upon how
their workload
is. Yeah, it depends on who you're dealing with. So yes, that's what we're here to do, is help you understand that, so you have proper expectations, proper preparation, and you're not making missteps or pitfalls where there need not be any, and missing out on your opportunity.
For instance, like you could take a chance with the 14-day rule, but
why? Why do it? Why do it? Okay, so let's talk about costs.
It's not that cheap,
yeah,
frankly.
So if
all said and done,
I'm going to tell you a real story, because I think real stories are important. The reason why I'm qualified to sit here and talk to you about the pitfalls of permanent residency is because when I was initially trying to get my permanent residency, I gave somebody $10,000 to help go through that entire process for me, because they told me they knew what they were doing and they could get it done in a very short period of time, and I wasn't going to have to do all the legwork myself. I wasn't going to have to deal with all the authorities, et cetera, et cetera. It's all going to be taken care of me. Now, I was busy. I have clients coming to Belize all the time that I'm dealing with. I'm constantly on social media. I make videos, as you know. So I'm a very busy guy. And here's what happened. That $10,000 got me nothing.
So you have to be careful who you work with as a facilitator. We're going to talk about that a bit more later, but not everybody that's going to offer you a service to help you get through these processes is going to necessarily be trustworthy. Yes, you can do it on your own without one.
Yes.
Might be a little bit more complicated, but here we are to help you a little bit through the process. We can always call us or email us to give even more guidance.
Yeah, we'll tell you who to deal with and who not to deal with. I mean, because everybody and their brother, I'm not joking, everybody and their brother, everybody from the taxi cab driver, everybody from the guy who handles your luggage at the airport, everybody from the guy behind the counter serving you your latte, everybody from the waiter at the restaurant, it doesn't matter. Everybody can help you get your whatever you need.
Yeah.
And that simply isn't true. And so many people fall into the trap, and what they end up doing is they end up giving money, and they end up spending a lot of time, and they end up waiting. I spent 2 years waiting for my process to happen, and it never happened, and I never saw that $10,000 again. So guess what? I'm passing that $10,000 lesson on to you. That's why when I ask people to pay for these webinars and seminars, and it costs a few $100 here or there, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to save you thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, because thousands of dollars saved is much cheaper than $100 or $200 invested.
I even had the same problem with 1 year with my work permit. I went to a reputable person and I paid extra money for them to facilitate.
No, it wasn't a reputable person. It was a major law firm.
Yeah.
She went to a major law firm.
And they passed it off to someone else. So they didn't want to take too much responsibility, but they passed it off to someone else, and that person dropped the ball. And I kept saying, where's my work permit? What's going on? Oh, well, that person is just taking a long time. They're just, the departments are backed up. Turns out the person just didn't bother. And then I had to restart the process again. So time and money wasted.
So let me explain this. So she started her work permit process months before me. I came in midstream while she was waiting for hers to happen. I dealt with a person that I know who has always come through for me, always done a great job for me, which, by the way, I'm happy to pass on to you if you contact me at info@paradise.com. And before she ever got her work permit, and at a cheaper price than what she got her work permit, and she went through a major law firm. Mine was not through a major law firm. Mine was through just a well-known facilitator. I was able to get my work permit. So it's very important that you know who you're dealing with, what their reputation is,
what they're capable, what their capacities are.
Because everybody will tell you that they can get it done. Don't believe everything you hear in Belize. Everybody can take you on a tour. Not. Everybody can get your work permit. Not. Everybody can do anything for you. Not. A few people can. And so we're going to make those resources available to you so that you know who to deal with, and everybody else you're going to listen to and take them with a grain of salt, thank them for offering, and you're going to deal with people that we tell you to deal with, because that way you're going to be best protected and have the highest likelihood of getting things done in the time frame that they need to get done for the cost that they said they're going to do it for, and actually helping you, again, do what? Get to the starting line. So let's move along here, Christiane. What's next?
Just another note on the cost. Don't be surprised if your friend has to pay less or more than you for their work permit because they do something different with their skill set. Depending on the industry that you're in, there are different costs. So management consultants pay a certain amount. You know, a tradesman background is going to pay another amount. It depends on need. It's determined by the government. There's nothing you can do about it. So it's really not worth getting, ruffled up about, because you pay the price that you pay for whatever it is you want to do.
All right, so let's talk about this. You're also going to run into people, especially on these Facebook groups. Oh my God, these Facebook groups drive me crazy, because Facebook groups have people that have been in Belize for 30 years, 40 years, people that have been in Belize for 5 minutes, people that haven't even ever been in Belize, and everybody's an expert. So on these Facebook groups, you ask a question, hey, how do I get my work permit? And you're going to get 47 different answers. And one person's going to say, well, I got mine in a week. Another person's going to say, no, you can't get it in a week. It's going to take 6 months. One person's going to say it costs $10,000. Another person's going to say, no, you do it yourself and it costs $1,200. Find a reliable source, stick with it, and if things are getting done correctly,
choose the course that works for you.
Stay with it. Because all the noise will distract you. All the noise is going to make you lose track of where you're going, and it's going to delay the inevitability of you being able to live the life you want, do the work that you want, have your children be covered by the student visa, et cetera, et cetera. So make sure that you're just keeping all of this in mind. There's a lot of stuff here that we're giving you that is experiential. Experiential knowledge, they say, is non-transferable. But you know what? We're doing our best here to transfer experiential knowledge.
We're trying to take these sort of dry list of rules and requirements and give them more of a real life experience, like he was just saying, experiential transfers. Hopefully you guys benefit from.
So you'll see the picture on this slide is a picture of Christina's work permit. That's what your temporary employment permit looks like when you get it. You'll also have a stamp and a sticker in your passport as well.
Always take a picture of your work permit because it's a flimsy piece of paper. It looks like that.
Always scan every document you ever get in Belize and make sure you have that electronically on your computer and on your phone.
Because they're easy to lose.
They're easy to lose, and if you lose it, you want to make sure you have that stuff and you can go down and you can get a color copy of it really quickly and easily. Also know this, there are no, well, I shouldn't say no, they're hard to find and they're expensive notary publics in Belize. That we have JPs in Belize. JPs can certify signatures. JPs can certify your identity. But you're going to make sure that stuff that you bring down to Belize with you, it doesn't hurt to go to a notary to certify that those are authentic copies and that your signature on them is authentic. So little extra step, a little extra tip there for you to do just to make sure you're a little over prepared. To be a little over prepared is always a good thing in Belize because you never know when they're going to up the bar as far as what's required.
Yeah, things can change at any moment. That is true.
All right, so let's talk about disadvantages, Christina. Why don't you run through some of these for people?
Well, we mentioned that it can be quite costly. You have to provide a lot of documentation, so your bank records, your resume, your you have to, if you're working for somebody, you have to sign, or somebody's employing for you, you have to sign employment letters. The list is a big list, and it can be time consuming and a little mesmerizing to gather all of that, but it's doable.
And we'll send you that list. So again, you hit me at info@paradise.com. I'll give you the most up-to-date list that I've got to make sure that you've got that information. And I will over-prepare you. Don't worry. I'll make sure that you're over-prepared.
Feel a little less overwhelming.
So that when you show up and they say, oh, no, we need this. And you go, haha, Will told me that I might need that, so I brought it. And they'll be surprised. They'll be like, wow, you've got a document that wasn't even on our list. So I'm going to tell you how to over-prepare to make sure that you've got everything you need and hopefully then some. Hopefully stuff that you won't even ever need to use.
So always better to have more than less.
I'm going to give you a hint right now. Go to a place that makes passport photos. And when you're there, I want you to get like 20 to 30 passport photos. If you're bringing kids down to Belize, get like 20 or 30 passport photos for them too. Come down with a stack of those things because you give out passport photos like crazy. So for example, you go to get a work permit, a lot of times they'll ask for 6 of your passport photos. Why? I don't know why they ask for 6. They only use 1 or 2. Okay, but they'll ask for that. When you go for student visas, they'll ask your kids for 4 or 5, 6 passport photos. I don't know why. You go to get a driver's license, lots of passport photos. So get a ton of passport photos, bring them down with you. Police reports, bring multiple copies of your police report. bring your original birth certificate and multiple certified copies of your birth certificate. I mean, you see what I'm saying here? If you'll do all these things, you are going to be so much ahead of so many people that come to Belize. What I've told you right there in the last 5 minutes is worth the cost of admission right here, because it's going to save you weeks and weeks, months and months of time, and probably $1,000 worth of your money. So
and stuff that we would have really benefited from knowing ourselves.
I wish somebody would have told me this stuff. I really do. All right, so incorporation costs. If you're going to start your own business down here, you're going to have to get a work permit. You're going to have to incorporate your business. You're going to have to get a trade license. There's lots of things that go along. We're going to cover that on next month's webinar, all about starting a business or buying a business or being in business in Belize. But understand the work permit is a necessity for anything to do with anything but being a retired person in Belize.
And yeah, we've pretty much covered the other disadvantages already through our discussion. So we're going to move on.
All right, moving along to the next slide.
We've also talked a lot about what we need in terms of documentation, and of course you will contact us and we'll give you the more detailed lists.
So let's just run through these real quick. Valid, clean police report. Oh yes, we didn't mention that. It has to be a clean police report. If you have felonies on your police report,
yeah, they don't like that too much.
Not so good. Oh, another thing you need, go to your doctor right before you come to Belize and get tested for TB. Get tested for venereal diseases, including HIV. Make sure that you are bringing a certified copy from your doctor of your immunizations, okay? Especially for your kids as well.
You don't need that necessarily for your work permit, but your work permit's also, as we mentioned, a stepping stone to your residency, and just to have it in general is a good thing.
Just bring it. Bring it. Over-prepare. Over-prepare. Okay? Bring your passport. Make sure you got a lot of empty pages in your passport. If you don't, if you're approaching 10 or less pages in your passport when you're coming to Belize, get a new passport before you come, because you're going to burn through those pages like that. And then you're going to have to go to the U.S. Embassy here in Belize, and you're going to have to renew that passport. That's going to cost you extra money, and it's a bit cumbersome to do because the U.S. Embassy is in Belmopan. So make sure your passport has lots of empty pages. Nowadays, you can get a 52-page passport. That's what I got the last time I renewed, and that way it'll last you a little bit longer. But Belize eats through pages of your passport. When you
if you're Canadian, there isn't an embassy. It goes through Guatemala, so you have to go to Belize City, and then they send it to Guatemala, so it's an extra step.
See, there's an honorary
consulate.
even know
only.
that.
Yeah.
That's why I've got her here, so that's great. Let's talk about letter of employment and employer-sponsored letters. You've got to have if you're going to come here and work, you got to find an employer that's willing to write you a letter saying that, again, your skill set meets a threshold that cannot be satisfied here in Belize. So make sure that you're making those contacts before you come if you can. Of course, you're going to need a resume. If you'd like some tips on how to write that resume, contact me, because there's a certain way you can write that resume that's going to be a lot more effective with the Belizeans. Don't write it like an American resume. It doesn't work, because they look at it and they're like, what the heck is this? I don't even understand what this means. You have to write it in a way that's going to be easily interpreted by the Belizean people.
In their paradigm, in their context.
That's right. That's right.
Their needs.
All right. Central bank approval.
That's for self-employed. If you're starting if you have your own business, a lot of people, what they do to go and become a management consultant, for instance, was what I did, is you start a hold company or a general purpose company, so you have to an incorporation, and then you can, under that incorporation, you can sell your services of whatever nature the corporation is articled for. But for that corporation, now you have to hit central bank approval, because now we're into corporate law.
So again, when you contact us and you say, here's what I want to do, here's my objectives, here's my goals, here's my time frame, here's my financial resources, here's my cash flow. You give me all of that information. What Paradise Guy has always done is I tailor make a solution for you individually to help you actually navigate that. And again, get to the starting line. Hardest thing you're going to do in Belize is get to the starting line. Doesn't matter what you're trying to do.
And not waste time going through hoops that are not relevant to your life goals.
Or giving people money that are going to steal it from you and not accomplish any of your goals. So be careful of that.
Two extremes there that we want to avoid.
I'm going to tell you this. This is the truth. When I came to Belize, I lost $50,000 right away. I lost $10,000 on residency. And I've lost thousands of other dollars doing little things here and there by going with the wrong people to help me out. See, everybody needs help in Belize doing things at different times. The key is to know which people to use. And if you go on one of these Facebook pages, you're going to get 27 different answers, and you're not going to know who to deal with. Because I direct so many people to the people that help me and to help my people, I have a little bit of leverage. They make sure that my people are taken care of because they know that I'm going to continue to send them people, which obviously puts money in their pocket. So please don't risk your future on other people. Contact me. Let me direct you. Let me help you be successful. Fair? All right. Let's move along. When you're in Belize, you will also need a copy of your lease. So in order to go start the process as well, you will need to at least have a lease from a property you're renting. If you're buying a property, you will need to show title of that property and or a contract to buy that property.
Property tax.
You will need to show property tax bills that are paid, utility bills, anything you can have in your name that shows that you are living in Belize is definitely going to be helpful to you and oftentimes required.
Yes. So
moving on. Becoming a temporary resident. Christina, what's becoming a temporary resident about?
This is a really relatively new category that kind of confuses a lot of people. And to be perfectly honest with you all, I don't know anyone who's actually applied for it. And I know a lot of people in Belize. I think the main reason being it's very expensive. But before we get to that, its raison d'etre is basically if you are the kind of person who has a lot of footholds in Belize, but can't really afford to do that 50-week with only.
By footholds, she means investments.
Yeah.
So, are you invested in Belize, and at what dollar amount? So generally, the threshold for that is $250,000
U.S.
If you can show
Belize,
that you have invested in the country of Belize $250,000, if you can show that, then there's the opportunity for what we call a temporary permanent visa. Now, what else can you tell us about the temporary permanent visa, Christina?
Well, it means that you can come and go. So that's the advantage. You don't have to do the 50-week, the only 14 days out of the country thing, because this is for people who have investments.
And they can apply and get approved in a pretty short period of time. Is that correct?
Yeah, but the pitfall, of course, is that you need that $250,000 US invested, and not just in property. I believe it has to be actual business concern or rental business or rental property, that kind of thing. It can't just be your house.
Although
there might be some.
If you own a house for $250,000,
there might be some wiggle room.
There might be some wiggle room because it's Belize.
See, on paper. So as you can tell, it's sort of a relatively thin sliver of the visiting population or the foreign population that would be qualified for this or interested.
But you know what? Let's be real about it. A lot of people come to Belize and spend $250,000.
This is true.
Because they buy condos or they buy a bed and breakfast. There's lots of people that come to the country and invest large amounts of capital. If you're one of those, Belize obviously wants your capital. They want you to invest in the country. And they want people that can afford to stay here and live here and spend their money in Belize to stay here.
Especially now, I think, with all the losses that COVID-19 has incurred for the country, they might be looking towards promoting this a bit more in the not so distant future. Hopefully, that would be great because it's another avenue. And so far, I think it's been underutilized.
Okay, so
from what I've seen.
If you're looking to invest in Belize, first and foremost, you need to talk with me because I got 30 years of real estate experience in the United States and Belize. Anybody in Belize can be a real estate agent. I'm talking your waiter at the restaurant, your taxi cab driver, or anybody else on the street can call themselves a real estate agent.
There's no formal qualification process.
No licensing, no qualification, no MLS, no
board.
oversight, no disciplinary committee. It is the Wild West for real estate. So deal with somebody you can trust, deal with somebody who knows how to write a proper contract, deal with somebody who understands how to network across the board in Belize and find you the property you want, because there's no MLS, multiple listing service, which is a centralized database for all those properties. It's hard to find the property you're looking for. And most of the properties you will see on other people's websites are inaccurate listings, they're old listings, they're dead listings, they're fake listings. So don't get too excited about everything you see on there. If there's anything you'd like me to verify, send me a link to info@paradisesky.com. Happy to make sure that what you're looking at actually even exists, hasn't been sold for 5 years, and stuff like that. So moving right along.
And if they want to learn anything more about the real estate environment in Belize, our last webinar was actually all about real estate.
That's right. And if you missed the last webinar or any of our past webinars, you can go to belizesuccess.com and you can go ahead and sign up to watch all the past webinars as well. So go ahead and look at that if you'd like to get a complete Belize overview about generalizations about everything in Belize. We did one on real estate, how to conduct and enter into any real estate transaction, whether it be buying or selling in Belize.
Construction.
Now we're doing this one on immigration. The next one's going to be on business ownership. I'm going to continue to add to this library to make sure that you're well informed and you can actually get done what you want to get done. So let's move on to the next slide.
Okay, so we've been talking about becoming a permanent resident, and here we're going to, I guess, go a little bit more in detail about the actual
Well,
process.
if you look at the pictures on this is what it actually looks like. That's the inside of your passport. And you see the stamp with the seal, and it says you are now a permanent resident of Belize. What that means is you no longer have to stamp. You can stay in Belize as long as you want. You can come and go as you please. You can work, you can start a business, you can do whatever
driver's license
you
easily?
want. Yeah, you can get a driver's license. You are free to do just about anything except vote.
And then if you're Canadian or from a Commonwealth country, you can still probably vote.
So permanent residency is a very desirable place to end up.
Yeah, the only thing you'll miss is the Belizean passport, basically.
That's right. Now, a Belizean passport, let's talk about that. A Belizean passport is cool. And I know a lot of people that have worked very hard and spent lots of years and lots of money to become a Belizean citizen. And there's a certain pride that comes with that. Belize is a wonderful country. People are awesome. It's cool to be a citizen. But if you look at the rankings of passports as far as worldwide value, strength, Belize isn't even on the map.
Very small country.
This little country's passport is worth nothing in the international market. You can go to other places like Mexico, obviously the United States and Canada are extremely strong passports. There's other passports, as I understand it now, that are even stronger than the United States passport, which is hard to believe, but apparently there are. So if you're looking to collect passports, and believe me, there are a lot of people that I talk to that collect passports, especially in this day and age when you never know what's going to happen in the world. If COVID hasn't proved that to you, nothing else will. You need to be able to be mobile between multiple countries, and you need to be able to travel with a passport that allows you to go places. A Belize passport, not going to do that. But a Belize passport will allow you to be a citizen of Belize, and there are lots of advantages in Belize for having that passport. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, yeah.
All right. So I'm not trying to bash on Belize in any way, shape, or form. I love Belize. I've been there for 5 years. But I'm trying to tell you the realities of their passport as an international instrument of travel and visas and work permits elsewhere in the world, not going to get you anywhere at all. Okay? All right. So, nearly all rights and benefits of citizen except passport and voting. We already said that. Citizenship granted after 5 years of holding. So in order to even apply for your citizenship in Belize, you have to have stayed in the country for 5 consecutive years. At that point in time, they believe you're actually serious about being in the country, and you can apply for them. But during that application process, which can take months, years, you cannot leave. And if you do leave for more than the allotted times, you will have to start that process all over again. So yes, there's a lot of hoops to jump through. There's a lot of things to understand. Belize, as of yet, is not one of those countries that you can go and invest and get a passport. I think they should. That would be awesome if they would do that. There are many countries that you can go in and you can invest $1 million in, and they will give you a passport like that.
I think that the Caymans is like that.
Yeah, and that's great. Because guess what? A lot of people come and invest there, and that serves their economy. Belize
Not quite there yet.
hasn't quite gotten to that point yet. Hopefully they will in the future, because more money is better, especially since Belize needs infrastructure, hospitals, airports, all the things that make life better for everybody in the country. So hopefully
Universities.
they will move, universities will move in that direction. Hell, just basic education for high school students. That could be propped up a bit as well. So Belize is a young country. They're still learning, they're still evolving, and hopefully they will continue to move in the right direction. Again, 1981 is when they became independent. All right, so becoming a permanent resident, I believe we pretty much already covered this. So I'm going to go ahead and skip this slide. Sometimes I get ahead of myself, but let's go right on and skip through this. This is also continuing with permanent residency.
Talking about some of the things you need.
We put this slide in here actually to be a little bit funny. You see all those pelicans?
Permanent residents.
They're permanent residents. They have their cards. So if you'd like to be
and
like,
they know what they're doing.
Yeah, if you'd like to be like them, which by the way, they don't even have to fish for themselves because they're sitting right next to my boat right there and they're getting fed by me.
What's probably Keycocker?
Yeah, that's on Keycockers.
Yeah.
So
the Keycocker pelicans know their way around.
Yeah, they know how to get fed. All right, let's move on to the next slide. Oh my gosh, we just keep on going with the permanent residency here.
It's a lot of documents.
Why don't you keep talking about that, Christina? Go through.
Well, this is the documents that we can give a list for upon demand. Just listing them here. Like we mentioned before, always make sure that you have your birth certificate or your marriage certificate because...
Oh, marriage certificate. Yes. If you're married, bring a copy of your marriage certificate. Matter of fact, bring 5 copies of it.
Often what happens is that you get one member of the spousal couple or unit that will go for permanent residency first and then claim the other as a dependent. It's cheaper or it's just simpler for them depending on whatever your domestic situation being. But then to do that, of course, you need that marriage certificate. A lot of times people come and their marriage certificate's years old and is back in storage in their home country and whatnot, and you're out of luck. And they say, well, we need that, so.
Yes, very often people get stuck in the process here because the person behind the counter says, yeah, but we need that. And you're in Belize, and your document is back in a storage unit in Canada. So what? So you have to fly all the way back there or get your relatives to go dig through your storage unit to see if they can even find it, if you even still have it. Or they got to go down to the courthouse and get an original certified copy of it. We're going to prepare you for all that up front. Again, documentation is going to help you proceed through this entire process much faster. Income tax statements aren't generally needed, but does it hurt to have them? No. Bank statements, great to have. Letters of recommendation from your accountant and or lawyer and or banking representative, very valuable. But I understand this as well. When I first came to Belize, they said, we need a letter of reference from your bank. Well, my bank was Chase. Well, Chase is a big national bank, international probably. And Chase said, we don't do letters of reference for anybody, period. And I actually got a letter from their legal department that said, sorry, not going to have it. I brought that back to Belize. You know what Belize said? We don't care. We still need it. Ooh, what do you do? What do you do? If you'd like to know what to do in those situations, when I send you that list of documents, I'll tell you how to navigate that situation. Because those are the situations in Belize that can be infuriating. Because you've got a letter from the lawyer, from Chase, international bank saying, we do not do letters of reference. And then you've got a letter from Belize saying, we need a letter of reference from your bank.
Yeah, it's happened to us all.
So how do you navigate that? I'll tell you exactly how to navigate that when you send me that email. So go ahead and do that.
Yeah, as you can see, a lot of these requirements will repeat themselves across the different kinds of permits. or visas required, or residency. The same kinds of documents come up as requirements. So because they're listed here.
That's why we need multiple copies.
Yeah, that's a good sec.
All right.
And so now for the fun, this is the fun one, the QRP program.
Okay, you'll hear this all the time. You'll hear QRP referred to all the time. QRP is called Qualified Retirement Program in Belize. It has some advantages. It has disadvantages. It's can be expensive. It can be time consuming. It can be a pain in the butt. It can save you a lot of money. It has pros and cons, just like every other type of program you go with in Belize. Generally speaking, here's the level details about this program. You have to be 45 years or older. If you're 45 years or older, you're at retirement age according to Belize standards.
Automatically eligible.
You can tell how old people live to be here. I mean, gosh, at 45, you're ready for retirement. United States, 65. Kind of wonder about that. No. Anyways, they'll allow you to retire at 45 in Belize, which is great.
And sometimes earlier.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't bet on it.
Yeah, don't bet on it. 45 years. You have to prove that you've got $2,000 a month U.S. in recurring revenue from a pension, from rental income, from an annuity.
From employment in the States or Canada.
Or from a
as long as you're not doing active employment in Belize.
Yeah, you can't work from Belize, so it really can't be active employment.
It could be like online, like an online business.
But you're supposed to have a work permit for that.
Yeah, so that's where it gets a little bit gray zone too.
So you see that right there? That's an example. Because guess what? We've seen both. We've seen people work in Belize without a work permit and work remotely and get by with it. We've seen people get a work permit and work from Belize remotely, and that works just fine as well. That revenue that Belize wants to see, they want to see that recurring revenue is not related to you having to perform work for it. They want to see that that is a residual income stream.
Or from business ownership abroad.
Or from business ownership, not from a job.
Yeah.
They don't want to. If you're retired, you're retired. If it's a pension, fine. If it's a retirement benefit of some sort, fine. If it's Social Security, fine. It doesn't matter if it's all those things. But if you're having to work, meaning you have to sit at your computer and do something and work remotely in order to get that income, they generally don't like to see that. Do some people do it? Yes. What they're most worried about, again, keeping this in mind, is that you are not going to run out of money. They don't want you to come to Belize and run out of money. So make sure you're putting your financial house in order before you come. So when you apply for the Qualified Retirement Program, there's obviously a list of documents that you're going to need to put together. There's an application fee. There's a form you need to fill out. There's people you need to talk to. You can do that all yourself. I promise you, you can do it all yourself. Is it going to be time consuming? Yes. Is it going to be less expensive if you do it yourself? Yes. Can it be easier, more time efficient, and a little bit more costly, but get you set up quicker? Yes. You have to decide for yourself which path you want to take. But everybody's going to tell you they can do it for you. Don't believe that, because you
emphasize that enough.
You'll get sucked in, you'll lose money, you'll waste time, and then you'll have to start over again.
So what does the QRP bring us?
Yeah, go ahead and walk through what it brings.
Well, basically, aside from import taxes that you'll pay on anything that you're going to be bringing in, you're not going to be paying income tax on a monthly basis because, well, you're not working.
But hold on. I should cover that. You can bring a car, a plane, a boat, a jet ski.
Yeah.
You can bring whatever you want, personal belongings. You can bring your couch. You can bring your appliances. When you qualify the Qualified Retirement Program, you can bring all your personal belongings down.
In a big container.
And no duty. See, duty when you're bringing stuff into Belize is quite expensive. And it's duty not only on the value of those objects that you're bringing into Belize, it's duty on the shipping cost as well.
Yeah, and the import taxes.
And it's subjective. So the person that runs into you that day, they look you over and they see you're wearing a Rolex and you're wearing nice shoes. And they go, I'm going to get as much as I can out of this person.
I have a personal story about that too.
Seriously, they will. I mean,
not Rolex.
I'm not saying that people are corrupt. I would never say that. But I'm saying that people are opportunistic at times, and that they will make sure that they are maximizing their internal gain
and their interpretation of the rules.
Based upon the situation. So if you're bringing stuff into the country, it's best to know who you're dealing with. Do you have a broker? Do you have a representative that's going to be there when your stuff arrives and make sure that it clears customs? Oh wait, I didn't know about that. I know a person whose stuff has been sitting at customs for over 6 months, and they're having to pay storage fees and other fees as a result of that. It's costing them thousands of dollars for their stuff to sit.
And sometimes just a paperwork error can result in it being stuck in a hangar.
Yep.
And that they start charging you for that.
Here's another thing. People will oftentimes try to sneak some stuff in. So they'll take their refrigerator, they'll open it up, and they'll stuff it with maybe some stuff they're not supposed to bring to Belize. And then they get caught. Well, if you get caught with that, guess what? All bets are off. It's going to cost you a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of hassle, and it'll be something that will go on and on and on and on. Nothing happens fast in Belize. Not even when you're really, really well prepared. Not even when you're really well prepared. If you're ill prepared, or you try to get by with something that you're not supposed to and you get caught, things will really, really, really slow down for you. So again, let us guide you, let us help you, let us make sure you're on the right track. Let's talk more about the qualifications for the retirement program. Again, you can bring in the vehicles, anything you want. You can bring in personal belongings.
Your vehicles can't be too old. They don't want old vehicles. They're not older than 3 years.
Yeah, that's true. So golf carts, you can bring in a golf cart because everybody drives a golf cart on Ambergris Key. You can bring in boats. People love to have boats, but you cannot drive your boat around unless you have a captain's license. If you want to get a captain's license, I have to tell you how to do that as well. And you cannot use any of those imports for business. If you do at any point in time switch to using any of your imports through the QRP to business, you will be disqualified and you'll have to pay back duty fees on all those items you brought in, and you will not be a retired person anymore. You will be required to get a work permit, and they will make your life generally unpleasant. So don't think you're going to fool the system by bringing all that stuff in and then a year later using all of it for business purposes.
For instance, if a lot of the stuff in your garage or your basement consists of a lot of tools, they're going to look at that with a much keener eye. Because they're going to say, oh, well, you're a tradesman?
Mm-hmm.
So you got to be careful what your stuff is, too. They're going to go through it.
Yes.
They are.
They are going to go through your stuff. So, again, couches, helicopter, plane, boat.
Anything that looks leisurely or just basically
private
life
use,
related.
personal use, has to be for your personal use, no business use for any stuff you bring in. And don't try to sneak stuff for your friends because they'll catch you. Next slide.
It's the disadvantages.
Oh, here's the fun part, the disadvantages. So Christina here is, she has a background in compliance as an accountant. So she's really good at talking about disadvantages of things. So I'm going to let her talk about that.
Well,
I'm going to sneak off and get something to drink real quick, and I'll be right back as she talks about these items.
We actually kind of covered a lot of them through the earlier discussion. We tend to be very good at that. Like some disadvantages are also someone else's advantages because they can, depending on what side of the fence you're on. For instance, age. For some people, 45, that's very young, right? For someone who is 43 like me, if I wanted my QRP, it's a disadvantage because I'm so close and yet so far. Obviously, that not being able to work for some could be an impediment and could be, well, I only want to work a little bit, but I'm mostly retired. Then you're in that, that awful little gray zone where you got to go and maybe find some other alternative, if possible, ways around that. Which could probably help you with. But generally speaking, you have to be committed either to working or to being fully retired. You still have to go through a renewal process every year, which should not be very cumbersome after the first year because the bulk of the work and the effort and the cost will probably transpire all within the first year anyway, because most people QRP, let's face it, to bring down a lot of their own household items, goods, vehicles, whatnot, because they want that with them in Belize. Well, once you've done all that, that's the hard part, really. That's the part that's going to cost you a lot with, shipping and everything. No duty, but shipping, and brokers. After that, it's just the renewing of the status. So relatively simple and straightforward. But you still have to go through a bit of a process.
All right, so the Qualified Retirement Program is a great program. It really is an amazing program. There are lots of benefits to it. It's not hard to qualify for if you're well prepared. So the takeaway from this is simply this. Get your documentation in order. Start the process earlier rather than later. Make sure you understand who you're dealing with if you're going to deal with any sort of a person that's going to facilitate the process for you. And make sure you have your time frame set appropriately so that you understand what is realistic as far as your time for qualification. Once you have your QRP card, you don't have to go down and get stamped at the immigration office anymore. You're basically a permanent resident because you're a retiree in Belize. It comes with a lot of advantages. You don't have to pay taxes on any foreign earned income. And of course, you can ship all your toys and personal belongings down to Belize without paying duties. So a great program.
And interestingly, it's not run by immigration. It's related. It's intertwined with immigration, but it's actually run by the Belize Tourism Board. And they are actually a great resource. They have a lot of good documentation on it, which is relatively easy and straightforward. It's easy to follow and straightforward. So it's not quite as quagmire-ish feeling as going through immigration authorized information.
So let's talk about the costs. I mean, on average, it's $1,200 US in fees to obtain. You have an annual card renewal cost of $50, so very minimal there. That $1,200 US is just the basic cost of application. That's if you're going to do everything yourself. If you're going to have a facilitator come in and do this for you and help you out, you're going to pay additional fees on top of that. You have to show minimum evidence of $2,000 US a month. I already discussed all that. 24K a year, accompanied by undertaking that the funds will be deposited into a Belize financial institution. Oh wait, we talked about that. Yes, you need to get a bank account open in Belize, and that takes time. So you see how these things stagger. What should you do first? Well, you should probably open a bank account. 2, you should apply for the Belize Qualified Retirement Program. Or if you're going to work, you should go to that process next. You need to make sure you're doing things in the right order at the right time. So if I can help get you started on this stuff, please let me know. I'm here to make sure that you're doing the right things at the right time. You have to pass clearance by Ministry of National Security of Belize. You have to have a clean and recent valid police report. I told you.
Like almost every other application you would make in Belize, you need that.
Yep. Very important. But after you're in Belize for a while, you can get a local police report.
Yes, much easier.
But when you're first coming down in Belize, literally one of the last things you should do before you show up in Belize is get a police report. Okay? Always make sure you do that. Now, if I'm going to help start the process for you in Belize for your Qualified Retirement Program, you're going to get a police report right now. But if you're not coming to Belize for another 6 months, right before you leave on that flight, 6 months from now, you're going to go get another police report because that's going to serve you for a while in Belize. I believe they're good for like 3 months.
6 months, I believe.
3 months, 6 months.
I would just be on the safe side, go with 3 months because, like we've mentioned a few times already, interpretations and levels of strictness can vary.
Okay. Dependents under 18 must prove that they are in school. Medical exam. Again, I talked about this earlier. Make sure you have a full medical exam, all your vaccinations, and proof that you have gotten tested for venereal diseases, TB, and hepatitis. I didn't mention that earlier. You got to be tested for that as well. Additionally, make sure you have vaccinations for everything you can get vaccinations for. If you'd like a list of vaccinations to get, I can send that to you. Well, info@paradiseguy.com. Happy to send that stuff all along to you. All right, let's talk about student and dependent visas. We've already covered this a bit, but I'm going to let Christina kind of run through some of the high-level details of this, and then I'll fill in the blanks.
Okay. Basically, if you're sending your child to school in Belize, they will want you to have a student visa. It's relatively straightforward to obtain. You probably don't need any help from a facilitator of any sort because it's really not too heavy documentation-wise compared to some of the other visas or permanent residency, for instance. You have to renew it at the beginning of every school year, which makes sense. I would start gathering my documents sometime in August. You need a school letter that usually only is given to you by the school once school is in session. So generally the time frame to get this is between September 1st and October 1st in my experience.
Yeah, that's correct, yeah.
And you have to do it relatively quickly. Otherwise, you can keep stamping your children. They'll understand, but you know, it's expensive because it adds up.
And after it used to be this, it may have changed now. After 6 months of extensions, the price doubles.
Yeah, I don't think they do that anymore now that they've raised the price.
Now that they've doubled it,
yeah.
now they've just doubled it for everybody. So
yeah, now there's no bump up in price, but you're paying a lot to begin with. So yay.
So the sooner you get it done, the more money you'll save on this. It's just nice not to be able to have to run to the immigration office every single month.
And I've been there.
You have to bring your kids. So many times I've showed up to the immigration office, and they go, "Well, where are your kids?" I'm like, "They're in school." And they're like, "Well, you can't renew without the kids here." I'm like, "But they're in school."
But it's funny. That's just another example, though, of where things differ depending on who you're dealing with, because they've never asked me that. Yeah. And my kids were in school at the same time.
So imagine that. Two separate people walking into the immigration office.
The same office.
At the same time and getting two different rules and regulations and stories.
It can happen, folks.
This is very, very characteristic of Belize. And this is what can be frustrating for people that live and invest and retire and start businesses there, is because their friend tells them, "Oh, well, I just did this and this and this, and this is the way it happened." Nope. That's not the way it's going to happen for you.
Oh, and like you mentioned, if you last year, you go and you repeat the exact same process that you did before, and it worked, and then you go into the office and there's a new guy there, and you give all the same documents, updated of course, and they go, "No, but you're missing this," and then you say, "Well, but I never had to provide that before."
Yeah, what was the document that last year?
For me?
Yeah.
Oh, it was a letter from their father saying that he was consenting to them going to school. I never had to provide that before, so I didn't go and get it.
So good point, though. Actually,
held me back.
So
I had to go and get that now.
If you are moving down with children, make sure you bring letters from their other parent authorizing them to enroll in school, authorizing them to get their student visa, authorizing them to travel to Belize, authorizing them to travel from Belize. If you do not have these authorization letters and they are not notarized and dated and signed and have a color copy of the passport and or ID with them, they will not work for you. So that is worth the cost of admission today right there. Just that little tip right there.
Yeah, always like the Boy Scouts say, right? Be prepared. Can't stress it enough.
Over-prepared. Be over-prepared. All right, so we're continuing on with the student and dependent visas. We've about beat this one to death, but go ahead, Christine.
Yeah, we've mentioned dependents. It's sort of for that gray zone, like, for instance, if you have an infant who's not going to school, that's a dependent. You still have to declare that child. If you have a spouse that's not working and you want to save on the cost of permanent residency, well, you can claim that spouse as a dependent, if they qualify. But then, of course, like we mentioned, you need to dig up your marriage certificate. Or generally speaking, it's not overly used in our experience as a visa because most people will fall under the other categories anyway. It's not that difficult to get either, and it's relatively inexpensive.
All right, so moving on.
This is the fun one.
Okay, common pitfalls.
And we've all been there, like we mentioned.
We've all fallen on our face in Belize. If you come to Belize and you think you're not going to fall on your face, get ready to fall on your face.
Think some padding.
Everybody, especially those that have been in Belize for a while, like ourselves, you think after a while you kind of know everything.
Never think you know everything.
Never think you know everything, because about the time you think you know everything, the country will humble you with new rules, new regulations, new people behind the counter you've never seen before. And this doesn't deal with just immigration. This deals with everything in Belize. So never.
And everybody means well.
Yeah. I mean, people are friendly. People are wonderful.
It's just the process evolves.
It's just.
And you have to evolve with it.
The way things work in Belize. There's a song by Bruce Hornsby back in the day called "That's Just the Way It Is." It's just the way it is. So when you come to Belize, don't expect for things to be static. Things are constantly ebbing and flowing and evolving. Sometimes they're moving in a positive direction, other times they're moving in a not so positive direction.
Just be ready to be flexible with it, go with it.
So if you walked in, like she said, if you walked in last year and you presented 5 documents and it got you through the process, and you come in the next year, present those same 5 documents, and they say, nope, don't stomp your feet, don't jump up and down, don't scream and yell.
And a lot of people have done that.
Just go.
Didn't work out very well.
Just go get your documents that they've requested and get it done. The number one way to get a Belizean to stop listening to you is get upset. This is a cultural lesson here for you. As soon as you get upset with a Belizean, you raise your voice, you raise your intensity, you get angry.
Yeah.
The window comes down. And they'll sit there and look at you, but trust me, they're not listening to you, and you're certainly not going to get anything done.
And you have to remember, they're humans too. They're people, and they're at their job. They're trying to do their job the best they can. Being an immigration officer cannot be an easy job. I have a lot of respect for them.
They're dealing with us yahoos all day long.
Exactly.
Come on.
That's what I was going to say. People coming in going, but I don't understand, all day long.
Or Joe told me I could do it this way. Well, they don't care what Joe told me.
And they're like, yes, but we have rules to follow too. And it's hard for us because we don't always want to say no, but we have to because we have standards. And the thing is, they have to treat everybody as much the same as everyone else in order to be perceived as fair. Now, if they make an allowance for you because you didn't understand the process, that throws it all into question. So they're trying to be as neutral as possible.
Or what if the person behind the counter just really likes you? See, there was a time, and this is a true story. There was a time, it's funny because this person's no longer in the immigration office, so I can tell the story. One day, I was driving to school, my daughter. I'm driving my daughter to school, and I see an immigration officer with her daughter walking down the street, and it's raining, and they're walking to school, and they're getting wet. They're getting splashed by all the carts that are going by. So I pull over, and I say, get in. And they get in, I give them a ride to school. We have a few nice words on the way there. I drop them off. Well, next month when I went into the immigration office, how do you think that immigration officer treated me? She treated me fantastic. And you know what? For the rest of the time that she's in the immigration office, which she's no longer there anymore, she treated me and my family really, really well. So you know what? A kind deed does not go unrewarded. So, I mean, I'm not saying bribe people or anything like that, but you know what? If you can be nice to somebody and the opportunity presents itself, be nice, because guess what? The number one reason people are nice to each other is because somebody was nice to them first. So
it just helps
go ahead and do
everything.
that. Don't be rude to immigration staff. That's not going to serve you. Don't miss your deadlines. Don't claim ignorance. I mean, they are so sick of this story. Everybody walks in there and they go, but I didn't know. And they're like, yeah, it's not my job to make sure you know. You're in our country and you need to know what the rules are. It's your responsibility, not ours. So get your together.
And that's part of what we're trying to help out with here right now, actually.
So we're going to make sure that you're not ignorant, that you're well prepared, and that when one of these curveball comes your way, you're going to go, they told me about this. They told me about this.
Yeah.
So don't show up unprepared. Don't show up claiming ignorance. Make sure you're showing up with original documents and or notarized documents when you can. Make sure you're not trusting the wrong people to help get things done for you. Do not try to bribe an immigration official.
Yeah, it's kind of like
that's a bad thing. Do not try to bribe an immigration official. Has it ever happened? Yes. Will it happen again? Yes. Should you ever try it? No. Just remember, I said it. Don't try it. Because if you do, bad things could happen. They could throw you out of the country. And I'm telling you, going forward, especially with the COVID pandemic that has been thrust upon us here, they're going to be a little bit more strict than they have in the past. So I wouldn't go down that path if I were you. Do not assume that what worked last year will work.
We talked about that one.
Yep. Letting anyone know about working remotely. So yeah, if you come in there and you say, I I'm working in the United States on my computer. I don't need this or I don't need that. No.
They're going to be like,
Don't ever offer that up. Don't ever offer that up. And do not leave the country for more than 14 days per year. Okay? We straight? Good. Let's negotiate the system realities. Oh, I love the name of this. The system realities. It sounds like the Matrix, doesn't it? I like that.
Try to make it sexy.
Okay, all right. So we're going to negotiate the realities of Belize. Let's just talk about that. The realities of Belize is that, guess what? There is ways in Belize of getting things done, just like there's ways in Mexico of getting things done. There's ways in the United States of getting things done. There's ways of making things go faster. There's ways of making things go slower. The sooner you're knowledgeable about those things, who to trust in those processes, who can help you make things happen faster or slower, etc., the better you'll be able to navigate that. We've learned a lot of those ways of doing things in the country, and we're here to guide you to make sure that you don't fall into the pitfalls. Do not fall prey to corruption. It happens. It's happened to me. It's happened to her. Hustled, intimidation. Intimidated. I mean, don't come with an arrogant attitude like you're from America or Canada or wherever you're from.
Because we like the way things are done there. It should be done the same way here.
Yeah, they will slap you down in 2 seconds. That will not be tolerated. You come to Belize and you adapt to the way Belize works. You adapt to their culture. You adapt to the way they think about things. And if you do that, you'll be able to navigate this whole process a lot easier. Individualistic interpretations of the act, inconsistent application of the law, people, years of experience, what they think about you. People on the street who work behind the counter may just not like you. And if they don't like you, guess what? They may make it more difficult on you. Every time your paperwork reaches the top of the pile, they may just take it off and put it on the bottom.
So it's always to your advantage and benefit to be cordial, prepared, and in general, kind and respectful.
On the island of Ambergris Caye, it's kind of funny. You drive around on golf carts. It's a population of 20,000 people, basically. You see the same people like 5 times a day. What do? You wave. You know why you wave?
Respect.
It's respect. It's kindness. And you know what? Everybody's connected to everybody. Everybody knows what everybody else is doing. So you might as well make friends everywhere you can. And that includes the people that are in the professional sector that are helping you with immigration things. Make a friend.
You will see them on the street.
Yeah, you see them on the street. You see them out on a bar.
There.
You know, there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, come have a beer with me. Or, hey, can I buy you a beer?
Professional boundaries can stay up regardless.
That's not a bribe. That's just being friendly. So, yeah, know that stuff actually does go quite a long ways. And also understand that there are backlogs. So that stack of paper I just alluded to, it's real. A lot of stuff is not in the computer system in Belize. A lot of stuff still sits in papers, stacks on people's desks.
They're working on it.
They're working on it. They've come a long ways. There's a lot of stuff on computer that didn't used to be on computer. Also, some days you'll show up at immigration or to pay your taxes or whatever you're doing. The lines will be outrageous. Other days, wide open. Like never go to the bank on a Friday afternoon. Ever. Don't ever go to the bank on Friday afternoon. Don't go to the ATM on Friday afternoon. It's going to take you forever to get through the process. The day that taxes are due as a business owner, which is the 15th, don't ever go to pay your taxes on that day. You'll be waiting in line. So, you know, you got to learn these things. Go in advance.
Go after you pay a fine.
Do everything in advance. All right. Also keep a note, what is a rule today may not be a rule tomorrow. So the laws often change. Let's talk about facilitators. Who are these people that can make magic happen?
That we've been mentioning.
Yes, okay. These people are not doing anything against the law if they're doing it the right way. But there are facilitators out there that do things against the law. Wow, have I thoroughly confused you? All right. There are people that do things the right way. There are people that do things kind of in the middle, and there are people that do things the wrong way. Stay on the good side of that. Stay on the right side of that. Pay your appropriate fees. Deal with the right people that know how to make things happen legally.
And these people are well respected in their community.
They're well respected. They are professionals. They really are professionals.
They know the right people, but they know the right people through the right avenues.
But look what happened to her. She used a prominent law firm.
Reputable.
And that law firm fell flat on their face.
Because they gave it to the wrong person.
I used a facilitator, not a law firm, not a lawyer, and boom, it got done just like that. And everything was perfectly legal about that. So because of our experiences, we can direct you on how to make sure that you're doing the right thing with the right people at the right time and paying the appropriate amounts for that. Because yes, does it cost money? Yes, it does. But if you can get it done in a month versus 6 months and you pay an extra $1,000, is it worth it? In my book, all day long.
Otherwise, you're going to be doing what? Stamping.
Yeah. I mean, you're going
to $200 Belize a month.
Yeah, you're going to be spending that money anyway, so you might as well get it done sooner rather than later. Also take care to understand where your potential roadblocks are. That's what I'm here and Christina's here for. We're here to consult for you. So if you run into a situation where you're like, I seem to be running into a roadblock or I'm confused, hit me up with your questions and let me explain to you what your options are in those situations. Each case is unique. So yes, you'll notice that the general aspect of this webinar, although specific as we can be, is still generalized because your situation is going to be unique. Everybody's situation is unique. Even with a facilitator, there is no guarantee that your process is going to go fast. So keep that in mind. And if you're considering coming to Belize and living in Belize and working in Belize or retiring in Belize, just know that just because Joe or Susie or Kathy did it one way doesn't mean it's going to work every time for you as well. And you have to have patience and understanding with that process. So let's talk about COVID-19 and how that has affected things.
Everybody's talking about this these days.
I mean, really, COVID has turned our entire world upside down. In Belize, in Mexico, in the United States, in Switzerland, everywhere, the whole world has been shaken up. Frankly, we're all still learning how to exist in this new reality. Christina, why don't you run through a few of these points that have been outlined on this slide, and then I'll chime in.
Well, here I just wrote a bit about how there are the different categories of people returning or coming to Belize. As of October 1st, the airport is apparently officially going to reopen for international flights. We are holding our breath cautiously.
Apparently, January 1st, they're going to relax their requirements and let people come in and actually move about the country. These are possibilities. We don't know because we don't know what the future incidence of COVID-19 is going to be, and we certainly don't know, oh wait, there's an election coming up in November. We certainly don't know what the future administration, how they're going to react to this and deal with this. So we only have a history of how the current administration is dealing with it. And we also don't know how the surrounding countries are going to deal with it as opposed to Belize. So lots of stuff to think about here. Know this, Belize is dependent on tourism, dependent upon expats, dependent upon foreign investment. This country lives, breathes, eats, and sleeps as a result of this.
Okay, yeah, and I put in the updated requirements for the different categories of returnees or visitors. So I think we can pull up this is a summary basically.
So new slide?
Yeah.
All right, we're on the next slide.
This is it. So it's a bit small because it's hard to fit on one page.
It's all that we fit on
This
this
is the
slide.
latest one.
But you know, this is the latest one, and we can forward it to you, no problem. We'll send it to you
And
in
I've
email.
summarized it in the next few slides anyway. So
this is the official document on Belize, and it basically says Belizeans and residents, persons with business concerns in Belize, foreign second homeowners, qualified retired persons, and long-stay non-nationals, foreign tourists. And it outlines what you can do and what you can't do and what your process is prior to arrival and what your movements are once you have arrived, what you're restricted to and what you're allowed to do, and that is as of today.
Yeah. So basically, if you are a Belizean citizen, or you are a permanent residency holder, or a work permit holder, what you have to do is you have to pre-register. There is an app on the government website.
It's called the Belize Healthcare App. And if you're a homeowner or a property...
There's an app, and then there's also the application.
Yes, so there's
you have to go to their
things.
website.
I was going to say, so there's the application, which you have to fill out. And 2, there's a healthcare app, which you can get off the App Store, Android and apparently iPhone, Apparently they work. But guess what? They've got like 5 more days here to make sure they're working. But you have to register with those. You have to fill out the application. You have to get a PCR test. How frequently before you arrive?
They don't actually, when you're a resident or a citizen or a work permit holder, you don't have to do it before you arrive, because they're going to make you do it anyway at the airport, mandatory.
And if you test positive, what happens?
You have to go straight to a government-approved hotel for 14 days of mandatory quarantine.
At your expense.
At your expense. And the test that you do at the airport is at your expense. It's $50 US. It's not so bad.
I don't know, $50 is still $50, right?
Yeah. And that's, so
and
if
then
you're
you have
not
to go,
coming as a tourist,
and then you have to go
or a
stay in a
temporary
hotel.
person,
You have to go and stay in a hotel, which is a quarantine-approved facility for 14 days. All expenses up to you.
if you're positive.
And then you have to get retested to make sure you're negative before you ever get to come out.
Yeah.
And if you've been keeping track of COVID testing, there are many people that test positive long after the 14 days. So it could be an extended period of time. So just keep that in mind.
And at the bottom, I have some pictures of some gold standard hotels, but that applies to tourists, which we'll talk about in a second.
All right. So let's talk about
the other category being if you own a second home in Belize, if you are a QRP, or you are someone who basically lives there but doesn't qualify for some reason under a work permit. The long stay non-national, I don't think there are too many of those, to be honest with you, for the reasons we already explained earlier. But they've listed them anyway because they're trying to catch everybody. So in this case, it's a similar process. You have to download the app. You have to go through the approval process. You have to prove that you own a home, because these are for homeowners more specifically. And it's the same deal. If it's negative, you actually have to, same thing with the permanent residents, you have to actually self-quarantine for 10 days, but you can do this at your home.
Yay!
You also need approval to leave your home after 10 days from the government. But if you're positive...
The question I have is, how are they going to police all this?
Yeah.
I mean, really.
I mean, I've heard talk of bracelets and
yeah, like
house checks.
Have you ever seen people that have been under house arrest and they put the ankle monitoring bracelets on them? I mean, actually, they've even talked about that now. I mean, I think it's ludicrous because no tourist is going to come and volunteer or a homeowner to be in an ankle monitoring bracelet and be under house arrest. So again, Belize is trying to figure this out.
And things are changing with this daily. So what we're saying today, tomorrow, could be modified.
They're trying to understand how they can not overwhelm the healthcare system. And Belize's healthcare system is easily overwhelmed. So it's just a matter of fact, you're coming to a country, people get mad at me when I say a third world country, because Belize is no longer a third world country, but they are a developing country. They're a young country. So they've got a long ways to go as far as getting everything in place. A lot of people come from Canada, where they have the socialized system. People come from the United States, which is not socialized. It's private and capitalistic, although they're both kind of a combination of both. You've got things that have been in the works and systematized over generations. Belize has been independent since 1981. They're just learning how to walk, proverbially here. They're an infant. So.
And this is something that's been slapped on them like every other country, frankly, but
COVID, what are we supposed to do about this? So they're looking at every other country in the world and they're trying to make the best decisions they can. And so here's what they've decided today. What we've learned in the last 7 months is that they change their mind frequently. So what we're telling you today may change. If you're curious about what's going on COVID-wise in the country of Belize, contact me before you make any plans.
We're always staying on top of it as much as we possibly can.
All right, so talk about foreign tourists. What about that?
Yeah, because that's where we're going to see a lot more people coming in on the 1st or in the next few months. Foreign tourists have to actually do this at 72 hours before boarding a plane test. You go get a PCR test. Obviously, if it's going to be positive, chances are you're not going to go on the plane. So I don't know what they do talk about. Well, if it's positive, you do this, but realistically speaking, it's going to be negative.
I'm going to throw in a side note here. What's happened is people will get a PCR test 72 hours before they get on a plane. Then they get on the plane. They fly to Belize, and when they show up, they get randomly tested.
That's a possibility.
And it can show up as positive. You know why? You got infected
on the plane
right before you got your PCR test in the United States, and it wasn't showing positive yet. 2, you got infected on the plane. Very common. Recent studies now are showing that the infection rate on a plane goes up exponentially because of the recirculated air and because of the tight proximity of people traveling. Apparently, the initial flights flying down at the 1st of October to Belize are entirely sold out. Hopefully, that means there's 1 seat between you guys. Well, if there's 1 seat between 2 people sitting there, what are you? You're like 1.5 feet apart? So wait, the air is not going to mix? I mean, come on, this is ludicrous. Even with a mask, you're going to breathe on each other. Oh wait, and all the air in the plane is being recirculated. So let's get real.
It's a high-risk environment.
It's a high-risk environment. Okay? Nutshell. Christina, go ahead. Proceed.
So you'll do that test. It'll be negative, otherwise you aren't going to come. But when you get to the airport, even though that negative test that you're carrying with you is going to help your chances of not getting randomly selected for further testing, you will be somehow possibly chosen for random testing. They have to do that, again, like he mentioned, because on the plane anything can happen. And that will also be at your expense, $50. And sort of the same applies. If it's positive, even if your trip was only for 7 days, I'm sorry, you have to go to a government-approved hotel and stay in quarantine at their behest for 14 days.
What? Hold on. All right, let's get this one straight. So I have 7 days off from work. I booked my trip to Belize. I somehow end up positive COVID before I leave. I can't leave the country. And I have to stay in quarantine at my own expense, miss my work days back home until such time as I test negative. Then and only then am I allowed to fly back to my home country. Ooh, something to think about.
Right. So if you're going to be coming to Belize on vacation in the more immediate future than later, you have to be prepared for all these possible outcomes. Long story short, if it's negative, then you can go on to your gold standard hotel only with approved gold standard hotel transportation, pre-approved.
Oh yeah, you can't even take a cab.
No.
You have to take their transportation at their cost, and then you have to go on their tours, which are gold standard operators, and it has to be a private tour. It can't be a group tour. So everything is going to cost more. We're not trying to be negative here. We're being realistic, because what we don't want is a bunch of people coming to Belize and then getting on social media saying how awful it was because they weren't properly prepared.
And on the flip side, they're gold standard, these establishments,
yeah, so
and these tour operators,
nice
because
places.
they're good people and good places. For instance, I had pictures above of Victoria House, Mahogany Bay, Grand Caribe. Those are 3 beautiful resorts on the island. But there's also at a lower post point, there's Sandbar, which is a hostel, and you can stay there for your vacation stay. But you can't go about and mingle with the Belizeans on the street. You can't go eat street food. You can't just go and pick up a Joe tour guide and go fishing at your behest.
Oh, and Secret Beach?
Forget it.
Forget about it. See, if you come to Ambergris Caye, one of the big tourist attractions is Secret Beach.
Unless some of the tour guides that are gold standard are taking you there on a
Exactly. They have to take you there on a boat, I believe.
Yeah.
So, and it has to be a private tour. So, yeah, I mean, things are very, very different in Belize right now. Again, could that change tomorrow? Absolutely. That's why you need to contact me at info@paradiseguy.com to make sure you're properly informed. I hope that you've enjoyed this webinar. I hope that you've gotten tremendous value for this, and I hope that you'll reach out to me, because if you've been on this webinar today, you're also entitled to participate in what comes next. What comes next is a question and answer session, And after that, after we conclude this webinar completely, you're entitled to a 20-minute consultation.
Personal consultation.
You can contact me via phone or via WhatsApp or Messenger, whatever, for a video, face-to-face. And I'll spend 20 minutes with you just talking to you about your specific situation. You see, as the Paradise Guy, I always want to make sure that you are well informed and that I'm helping you, again, achieve your objectives. If you thought this webinar was good today, I hope that you refer your friends, your family, other people to go and watch them. You will be able to watch all of my webinars on a pre-recorded version in the future. I generally wait about 30 days before I publish those up. They're at a deeply discounted rate, but you will be able to watch that. Some of the information in this may not be as relevant at that point in time because 30 days will have passed. But you can go back now and you can watch my last webinar all about real estate. You can watch the one before that, which is a Belize overview, which will teach you so much about how to exist in Belize. And for that, I just want to make sure that you're happy, that you're satisfied, and I appreciate so much you watching ParadiseGuy.tv, which is my YouTube channel, which has hundreds of videos all about Belize and now Mexico. And I also want to make sure that you'll hit me up with all your questions in the future. So with that, my name is William Narod. This is Christina. We appreciate you guys so much. And with that, we're going to sign off and we're going to move into the question and answer section of this program now. So y'all take care. Cheers. Okay, so welcome to our question and answer session of the webinar. We've got some questions coming in from people that I definitely like to address. One of them, which is actually a kind of a funny question, is what is this a picture of and how can I go to wherever this is? The picture you're seeing on your screen right now in the question and answer screen is called Key Cocker. Key Cocker is the sister island to Ambergris Caye. You can get there in 25 minutes from the island of Ambergris Caye via water taxi. It's very, very affordable to go back and forth between those two islands. It's about an hour off the coast of Belize City. So if you wanted to get there from Belize City, 1 hour on the water taxi. This area that you're looking at right here is called the Split. There's a very famous bar and restaurant you'll see in the Sandy area over there, which is called the Lazy Lizard. It's a great place to go, great place to have fun. If you look at a lot of my past videos on ParadiseGuy.tv, you'll see that I, my friends, my family, my clients, and of course my kids have been there quite frequently. If you look on the other side, which is the north side of the island, that didn't used to be the north side of the island. That where you're seeing the split right there was actually split by a hurricane back in the 50s, 60s.
I thought it was later than that.
It was a long time ago. I'll just say that. It was a long time ago. But a hurricane hit and actually divided the two parts of the island. So now there's a north part and a south part.
They've since dredged a bit.
Yeah, they've dredged a lot, which you can see from the white sand. That's all dredging. But the north side has been relatively undeveloped until recently. Now there's lots of development going on over there. Really beautiful. Beautiful resorts going up there.
There's the famous Coco King.
Yes, and the Coco King Beach is over there on the west side as well.
A lot of fun.
So if you have questions about what to do, where to go on Key Cocker, please hit me up at info@paradiseguy.com. Of course, I've lived on Ambergris Caye, as did Christina, for 5 years. So happy to help you out with what to do there. And mainland, I have the perfect connections for you for all things on the mainland. Whether you want to go to the zoo, whether you want to go to the ruins, whether you want to go see the whale sharks, whether you want to sit on a beach in Placencia, Hopkins, Orange Walk, Corozal. There's so much to see. And don't forget San Ignacio, because San Ignacio is absolutely beautiful. Stunning. With the Mayan mountains. So that being said, thank you so much for that question. I really do appreciate that. The next question is, can I come to Belize if I don't have a current passport? No.
No, so much no.
You have to have a renewed passport. It has to have at least 6 pages in your passport. I recommend even more pages because Belize is famous for eating up pages of your passport. Make sure if you need to get it renewed, you do that before you come, because otherwise you'll have to go through the U.S. Embassy here. And that's a process, and there's an added expense for doing it that way.
It can be done.
It can be done. And frankly, I've actually gone through that process myself before.
I've renewed my son's passport through Canadian consulates.
And it was no problem doing that. Okay, we're waiting for our next question to come in. Christina, do you have anything you talk about while we're waiting for the next question to come in?
Good question. I think I covered a lot of my anecdotal stories. They have a lot of anecdotal stories. They probably have more that would be
Sometimes it takes a while when people are typing their questions for them to come in, so I appreciate your patience. But what would you teach somebody that is moving to, say, Ambergris Caye with children? What are some tips you'd give them?
I would make sure to secure the school registration in advance. That's something.
What's going on in Ambergris Caye with schools these days?
Yeah, that's another thing. I think that the school that most expats like to frequent, the Island Academy, is no longer going to be open after next year. So that's something actually to keep in mind. What are the alternatives going forward for elementary up to grade 8?
So the Island Academy was a private institution, great school. Both of our children attended that for years. And
it great school.
It just so happens that the owner of that has the most valuable piece of land on the island.
It's beautiful.
It's beachfront. It's amazing.
It was a beautiful school.
And she's been running that school for quite some time. She's done a great service for the island. Our kids certainly benefited from that, but she's decided, you know what, it's time to cash out and it's time to retire. So she's going to cash out, and my gosh, she's going to cash out in a nice way because, again, most valuable piece of land on the entire island, beautiful beachfront. So if you're considering schooling for your children down in Belize, if you're going to move to Ambergris Caye or the mainland, please hit me up at info@paradisesky.com. We'll educate you as to what all your opportunities are for your children. We can also make some recommendations based upon how other people are homeschooling and or online educating their children as well, and how that works. So make sure to hit us up for that. Anything you want to add to that, Christina?
Getting back to the student visas, one thing to keep in mind, they run out as of June 30th. It's not for a whole year. So that 200 Belize, yes, it goes far because you don't have to renew it every month, but just keep in mind not to forget about stamping them in the summer. I've done that.
Okay, so the next question I got,
done that.
This is an interesting question, is how can I drive in Belize if I don't have a Belize driver's license? Well, once you have your permanent residency, you can then go ahead and get a driver's license in Belize. It's a very simple process, costs about $75. Go to Belize City or even in San Pedro. You can go wherever you are and you can get a license. It's a very simple process. But with your valid driver's license, foreign driver's license, you can drive a golf cart and or a car in the country of Belize.
Yeah, it's not a problem. You just have to make sure that if it is coming due on your birthday usually, that you have it renewed in your country of origin, so you can keep going with that driver's license. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to drive in Belize. And they are quite adamant about that. They have told me that when mine was coming up due. Well, if it expires, you can't drive. I'm like, but I'm not a permanent resident yet. Too bad. Go get it fixed. Got it fixed.
So the next question is actually a really, really good one. I'm really glad I got this question. It's how long in advance should I start this paperwork process that you've talked about as far as permanent residency, QRP, and moving to the island? Well, that's a big question. I'll back it up and I'll reiterate a lot of things that we've said. The first thing you're going to need to do is you need to start the banking process.
That's important.
It's important. So if you're going to come to Belize and you're going to stay for an extended period of time, start the process of opening your bank account. Hit us up at info@paradisesky.com. We'll send you a list of all the documents you need to supply. Collect those, and you're going to FedEx those down to us. When you FedEx those down to us, we're going to make sure they're submitted on your behalf to the appropriate people, and the process will at least be in motion. Then when you take your trip down to visit, because you're going to do that, you're going to come down, you're going to visit, we're going to go and we're going to follow up on those documents, make sure that none of those documents have been lost, none of them have been misplaced.
And maybe it's a good idea also to go to more than one bank in case there's a hiccup at one or the other, because there are basically two to choose from.
Yes, because Belize Bank has now purchased Scotiabank in Belize.
So
So Belize Bank now holds the majority of mortgages and loans in the entire country of Belize, owned by a wealthy person from the UK.
yeah.
You may have heard of him, Lord Ashcroft. Anyways, there's also banking relationships that are heavily utilized by locals and expats with Atlantic Bank in Belize as well. So Scotia is now part of Belize Bank. So just understand that if you're dealing with Scotia, you're dealing with Belize Bank, they're kind of one and the same.
Yeah.
Okay?
I mean, I don't know to what extent the merging process has
Yeah,
evolved at this
obviously,
point yet, but eventually
merger,
you can expect things to.
Yeah, bank mergers take some time, but obviously that's underway. But Christina, as it relates to timeframes, if they're going to start the QRP, I mean, how early do you think they should start submitting their documents before they even plan to move down to Belize?
I would start at 6 months in advance, just to give myself a buffer. I mean, realistically, it probably takes about 3 or 2. Yeah, but you never know when something can go wrong.
Yeah, but there's also this.
Go missing.
All of these government agencies, as a response to COVID, have scaled back.
Yes, and then there's
so their staffing is way down. So things that used to take 3 months are going to take 6, 7 months.
So maybe a year even.
So really, if you're thinking about Belize, if you've got it in your imminent future, if you're locked on, Belize is in my future, you need to contact us right away and you need to start the process. You can't do it too early, I guess would be the appropriate response. Okay?
And you might, if you do, one thing about starting early though is that some of your documents may run out, they might expire. For instance, I wouldn't go and get my police report that's only good for 6 months a year out, right? That just makes no sense. So you get the documents that are going to have a certain shelf life at the appropriate time that you expect to use them. But the things that you can prepare in advance, do.
Okay, here's the next question. So you mean, Will, that I can't come to Belize right now and go see Belize? I have to stay at my resort.
Well, you can go on a gold standard tour.
Yeah.
With we know some really great tour operators who can give you a pretty good view of certain like ruins, like Shenandoah, for instance, on the other side of the country.
But I think what they're asking, Christina, is
street life.
Can they move around?
Like you can walk down the street.
Can you walk down the street? Can you get in a golf cart and go explore the island of Ambergris Caye?
Albertina.
Can you rent a car in Belize City and go explore the mainland? No. Not right now. Now, may that change as of January 1st, which is what they're talking about? It may. I hope so, because coming to Belize and not being able to experience the culture. See, literally what they're trying to avoid you mixing with the local community because they're afraid you're going to infect the local community with COVID.
Or vice versa.
Or vice versa, right? So they don't want that to happen. So they're thinking, how can we get tourists to come here and exist in a relative quarantine environment and still have fun? That's a tough equation to solve.
And they're trying to find the happy medium, and they know they're not going to please everyone, and that's a tough position to be in. I respect that.
So here's what I would do. If I were you and I was thinking about a vacation to Belize, I would book it after the first of the year. I know. Can you believe that me, the Paradise Guy, is saying that? I'm saying that. And the reason for that is because guess what? As of October 1st, you have to wait. Sorry, my dog was just doing something he wasn't supposed to. You have to wait and see what is going to happen. How is the generalized population of Belize going to react to this? How is the government of Belize going to react to this? How are the tourists going to react to this experience? Wait, see, and watch and learn. Book your trip for next year. And when you book it for next year, talk to me first and let me help coordinate all of that so that you can have the best experience possible. You know, just recently, this week as a matter of fact, Tropic Air, one of our local providers,
I was going to mention that.
They just opened up
I was going to mention that
trips from Belize to Cancun. Hey, we've opened up Belize to Cancun. We're like, oh, that's awesome. Except this.
What do you do if you want to come back?
How do you get back? Because when you fly back to Belize and you're coming from Cancun, and Mexico apparently is just full of COVID, so it's a huge risk factor. So you can't come back in without getting tested. So when you come back in, you're mandatory quarantine. When you come back in, you're mandatory tested. And you're setting yourself up for a big conundrum of how to get back home, although you're going to have a great time in Mexico, right?
Where there is no quarantine, FYI.
Yeah, so you can fly into Mexico, no quarantine, no PCR tests required. It's wide open for tourism. Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know. Time will tell. But I'll tell you this, for the economy, Mexico is doing it right for the economy. For health reasons, we'll see long term if that's the right play. Belize is trying to play it right for health reasons. For the economy, I'm telling you, there are people in Belize that are starving to death right now. There are businesses that are going out of business, and it's going to reshape the economy and the business structure of Belize forever.
Which is why the government is trying desperately to maintain some form of tourism, limited, but they can't. They understand that they have to have something going on.
I mean, listen, do I want you to come to Belize? Absolutely. But when I want you to come to Belize, I want you to have a great time. And if you're locked at your resort, by the way, Belize has no all-inclusive resorts. So because Belize has no all-inclusive resorts, the fact that now the government has forced them to be all-inclusives, they don't know how to do that. They're not set up to be all-inclusive.
And one of the requirements to become a gold standard hotel is that the hotel has to have its own restaurant or food services.
And I'm going to tell you,
so that's what you're stuck eating.
A lot of these restaurants, they've got a limited menu. And if you're stuck for 7 days at a resort eating that same food for 7 days, you're going to go crazy. You're not going to get to eat Belizean street food. You're not going to get out and go to all the great restaurants around Belize because there's so many of those. You're not going to get to go experience the local culture and the bar and the restaurant scene that exists out beyond your resort.
For one of the biggest draws of San Pedro, for instance.
Yeah.
Placencia.
And again, not being negative, realistic. We love Belize. We love you coming to Belize. We love to spend time with you. But one of our favorite things has always been that when our people come to Belize, we get on a boat with you. We go out, we go fishing, we go catch lobsters, we go have a beach barbecue, we go to Key Cocker for the day. We go here, we go there, we go around here, we go to the sandbar. We do so many things. We go fishing. But you know what? Right now when you come, we can't do any of those things with you. You have to go on a private tour because we're not allowed to mix. You understand how different that is? So if you're planning a trip, Brave New World, new reality, new normal, COVID, pandemic, post-world, contact us. Let us guide you in it. I'm sure Belize is going to figure out a way to get through this. If not, they're going to do like Mexico and just say, you know what? We need tourism, so we're going to open up and we're going to deal with it. The thing that Mexico has on Belize is Mexico has resources. Mexico has the money to deal with the hospital load that may result from more people being infected. But as of yet, so far, it's working very, very well in Mexico, and things are moving in the right direction. So maybe Belize is going to learn something from this and follow that example.
And that's not to say that Mexico doesn't have its own measures.
No, they have their
They don't have the quarantine. They don't have the forced testing. But what they do have is very strict rules about where you wear your mask, who can be going to certain grocery stores, for instance, how you carry yourself on the street. That basic respect, common sense when it comes to protecting yourself medically from or just social distancing, but nothing about forcing people to stay home. They've already gone through the lockdown phase.
Yeah. All right, so I got a next question. Next question is, but Will, what if I need to go to the store while I'm in Belize? Wow, that's a great question. What you're going to have to do is you're going to have it delivered. So your hotel that you're staying at will have a concierge service, and they'll be willing to go to the store for you, buy whatever you need, and bring it to you. But you being able to get in a golf cart or a car or walk and go to a store and get what you need and come back, not a reality at this point. So great question. Again, it's interesting answering these questions because we so much want to encourage you to stay in love with Belize, to still want to come to Belize, to plan your trip to Belize. But by the same token, we want to avail you of the realities so that you don't come with false expectations and walk away disappointed or frustrated. So I hope that makes sense to you. With that, I think we've answered about all the questions we have here in our Q&A session today. But I want to tell you this. Anybody who's on this call today, and there are a lot of you, if you'd like to make a call with us personally and talk with us and ask us any more questions, we are at your disposal. Please hit me up with an email at info@paradisesky.com. I'll make sure to get back with you and let you know what time is in my schedule that is available, and we'll make sure to guide and move you in the right direction so that Belize can become part of your future. So with that, my name is William Narod. This is Christina. We'll see you again on our next webinar. Remember, next month, we're going to talk about
investing, starting, or building a business.
Yes, so it's going to be a great webinar. And again, if you'd like to watch any of the past webinars, you can go ahead and go to BelizeSuccess.com and subscribe to those. I really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is William Narod. I am the Paradise Sky. Cheers.